Chapter 861, Cherishing What Should Be Treasured. Tang Xiu's eyes completely lit up the moment the soul-slaying spike appeared. He didn't care even if the 8-division dragon trap array was broken, but instead moved lightning fast to chase the flying nail. At the same time, he unleashed a technique that caused his primal chaos force to surge out and wrap the soul-slaying spike. Retrieve. He flashed to the air while his hands formed a seal, wrapping the scrabbling soul-slaying spike with his primal chaos force to pull it to him. Impossible. What a powerful chi. The complexions of One-Eyed Dragon and Tao Master Poison greatly changed as they were flustered. That art was as though fixated on their bodies, causing them to freeze in the air. Tang Xiu didn't even glance at them. He bit his finger and a drop of his blood instantly merged into the soul-slaying spike, absorbing it into his body in nearly the blink of an eye. Light, deal with Tao Master Poison. I'm gonna take care of One-Eyed Dragon. Tang Xiu looked a bit excited as his eyes finally fell on One-Eyed Dragon and Tao Master Poison. His body flashed like a lightning bolt and appeared in front of them as he instantly unleashed his divine sword. The 100-meter-long sword beam slashed through the sky and chopped down towards the two men. Block it. One-Eyed Dragon roared and rushed to condense his true essence into the form of saber, which he brandished toward the sword beam's tip. At the same time, he released and controlled his golden core. The dazzling golden core burst out with a blinding light and, along with the saber formed by his true essence, clashed head-on with the sword beam strike. Tao Master Poison roared while pulling out a torn black banner from his sleeve pocket. He frantically infused his true essence into it, and the palm-sized black banner quickly soared and wrapped him in the blink of an eye. At the same time, his other hand instantly condensed a dark blob of green light in front of him as he threw it toward the sword beam. Boom. Yet, the divine sword's momentum was unstoppable and crushed the true essence-formed saber with irresistible force. It then continued hacking on the golden core the size of a ping-pong ball, smashing the dark green blob before finally striking One-Eyed Dragon and Tao Master Poison. Puff. Arg. One-Eyed Dragon spurted a few mouthfuls of blood while also bleeding from his ears, eyes, and nostrils. His whole body seemed to have been struck by lightning and his spirit quickly wilted. His body flew backwards for nearly 100 meters, and he barely managed to dash to the front to grab his nearly destroyed blown golden core. He could clearly see that his previously dazzling golden core now had numerous cracks at this time, almost as if it could completely shatter at any time. Get back. One-Eyed Dragon pulled the dimmed golden core back and swallowed it again. Compared to One-Eyed Dragon, Tao Master Poison was in a much more miserable state. The dark green sphere he threw was shattered and had scattered into ashes due to the slash. Even the black banner that wrapped his body had already been shred. The sword beam also left a more than 10 centimeters long bleeding wound on him. He could even see that several bones had broken and his internal organs were faintly exposed. Ancestral reverse of myriad swords. Tang Xiu smacked his lips and controlled the divine sword as it miraculously transformed into countless sword images that covered the sky, and suppressed One-Eyed Dragon. The dozens of sword beams shot directly around the old man, sealing off all possible escape routes One-Eyed Dragon could take with torturous momentum. One-Eyed Dragon knew that death was looming over him. Only at this moment did he realize that the long sword was an absolute terrifying divine weapon. No other magical weapon could unleash such enormous momentum. Right now, he regretted the moment when Tang Xiu had taken away his soul-slaying spike since he didn't seize the chance to immediately flee. Spare me and I'll serve under you for 100 years, shouted One-Eyed Dragon loudly at the juncture of life and death. Contempt and disdain flashed in Tang Xiu's eyes as he coldly replied, I have enough subordinates already. I don't want to receive an old man with a foot already stepping into the gates of hell. While speaking, his fingers moved and formed the lightning evoker art as a bolt of lightning the size of an arm struck down from the sky and penetrated the slit of the sword beams and bombarded One-Eyed Dragon. Thunder rumbled and lightning struck, ripping him to shreds. One-Eyed Dragon howled miserably. His flesh turned into scorched, charred meshes of skin. Right as his cracked golden core shot to the distance, a sword beam flashed from the divine sword and accurately hit the golden core, shattering it into several petals. The other side of the fight. The fully clad in white light was manipulating his flying sword and constantly barraged Dao Master Poison with his strikes. Although his cultivation was a layer lower than Dao Master Poison, merely the early stage of Golden Core, the latter had been heavily injured and could only use less than 60% of his power, thus, he was on the verge of collapsing under the swift and fierce strikes from light. Puff. Although Dao Master Poison already knew that there was another combatant, the merciless Dark, hiding in the darkness, the swift and fierce attack from light had already made him shake and crumble. He could keenly sense that someone behind him was attacking, but he was unable to dodge or block it since he was too busy fending off Light's attacks, leading to Dark's flying sword piercing his back. Light had stopped attacking but Dark, who was now exposing herself, still kept assaulting fiercely. Her flying sword had literally lacerated Dao Master Poison's body and tried to snatch his golden core inside. Just as she was about to grab it, however, two venom bees appeared on both of her sides all of a sudden and shot toward her neck. Danger. Dark was good at sneak attack and assassination, but she realized she couldn't avoid the two venom bees that popped out all of a sudden. She controlled her flying sword to block one that shot at her left neck, but the other one from the right side had come less than half a meter from her. Puff. A dazzling beam suddenly flashed through and pierced the venom bee that was about to bite the right side of Dark's neck. The suddenly appearing beam turned out to be a silver needle that pierced its body and took it down, canceling the peril that was nearly upon her neck. With lingering fear on her face, Dark looked at Tang Xiu before she grabbed the golden core. Her body then flickered and appeared in front of Tang Xiu as she gratefully said, "Thanks for the help, Grand Master." You see, Dao Master Poison is an expert at the mid-stage of Golden Core. Tang Xiu shook his head and said, "It's not surprising that he has some lethal and terrifying things in his possession. Just be more careful in the future. Even insignificant people in our eyes may be able to unleash an unexpected and terrifying strike that can make us end up miserable, or dead. The path of cultivators is rough and full of ups and downs. Only by blazing through all difficulties and keeping your vigilance will you be able to walk further and stay alive, and become much stronger. We'll keep Grandmaster's teaching in mind with earnest," said Light and Dark in unison. Tang Xiu fell into silence for a while and then suddenly spoke, "From today onward, I'll bestow upon you the name of my family, Tang. Are you willing to accept it?" Bestowing his family name? Light and Dark exchanged glances before the siblings nodded without a word. They knelt in the air before Tang Xiu and kowtowed thrice to convey their gratitude. "Now that you've accepted it, let's untie the troublesome thread that has been troubling you all the time," said Tang Xiu. "Whether you choose to accept your lineage or sever your blood ties, it's yours to take." Understood. Yet, a look of hesitation was evident on the siblings' faces. Tang Xiu shot them a deep look before he suddenly turned around and spoke, "Do you want to hear a story?" Light and Dark, who had just been bestowed a surname and were now called Tangguang and Tangin, nodded and replied, "Please do tell, Grand Master." "I once encountered such a person in the past, one who sprung from a prestigious house of a big section. It can be said that he was an existence that countless people envied and must have looked up to," narrated Tang Xiu. "One day, however, he seemed to have changed in nature, transforming into a very diligent and hard-working man instead of feeding himself with the golden spoon he had always had since birth, and yet, he still felt very lonely inside, even though he had his parents, relatives, and friends. That loneliness was even very painful to him sometimes because he had always been missing someone, his real loved one, a family member that was his mother, who had borne bitter hardships to bring him up, but lived in the blue planet in the distant starry sky." Tangguang and Tang looked at each other. They had listened to some small part of the story and immediately realized who the said person in Tang Xiu's story was. It was because the main character in the story was in line with the story of their Grand Master. After he returned to Earth, he was no longer at the supremacy, no longer the supreme of the immortal world who stood on the aloof pedestal. Tang Xiu continued the story, yet still, he was very happy and satisfied. He didn't have his former power and strength, but he was willing to start over from scratch. He didn't have prominent stature, but he could strive to achieve. But even more so, the unforgettable family love and bond that had been carved deep inside his bones and heart had been regained and was worth cherishing. You two, brother and sister, should be aware of who I am talking about. Tang Guang and Tang An nodded at his words. The story of the lesson I just told you is nothing but a beginning, said Tang Xiu. After I returned to Earth, I also solved some of the riddles that had plagued my mind, such as what happened to my father and the relatives of his family line, which was the Tang family of Beijing. Tang Guang and Tang An trembled at the same time. They already had learned some facts about their grandmaster, Tang Xiu, to begin with, so they understood what their grandmaster wanted to tell them. They realized that their parents probably gave them to their current master not only to obtain cultivation techniques, but also probably due to the hope inside their hearts for them, a hope that they could follow their master and become an immortal existence like her. After a long time passed by, Tang An took off her mask, revealing her stunning face that could topple a kingdom. The complex expression that was covering her face was gradually replaced by a firm and resolute look as she said, Grand Master, we, brother and sister, are surnamed Tang, while our mother is surnamed Gu. We're very grateful to those who gave birth to us, and we're also very thankful to those who abandoned us as well. Dark Ken already understands that it's great to have more family members and kinship, and one should appreciate what they currently have before it's gone. Grand Master, I understand what I must do. We'd like to see them, Grand Master, interjected Tang Guang in a heavy voice. Off you go, then. Tang Xiu nodded and said, regardless of one being a Taoist cultivator or immortal, one still has 7 emotions and 6 desires. Only when one refines the heart amid the tumultuous matter of the world can their state of mind be so strong and impregnable that not even countless demons could invade it. We understand. Tang Guang and Tang An looked at each other before the duo flew in the direction of Qinglin County in a flash. As Tang Xiu landed back on the ground, he saw Wang Rui stab and mutilate the body of Tao Master Poison with a dagger in hand. He already had done it dozens of times, yet didn't stop at all. He was seemingly releasing all the hatred he had in his heart while cutting. Tang Xiu shook his head secretly. Then he looked at Electro Lady and Aquababe and said, your mission has been accomplished, so you can go back. Also, give my regards to Duanmu Lin when you see him. Got it, replied Aquababe while cupping her fists. Electro Lady, however, looked somewhat spaced out and only cupped her fists perfunctorily. Her eyes glanced at the direction where light had just vanished from, and asked with a hesitant look, Tang Xiu, can you tell me whether I can see light again in the future? Tang Xiu was surprised. Did you really fall in love with light? Chapter 862, Improving Cultivation. Tang Xiu's impression of Electro Lady was that she was a shallow woman. She only saw men for their looks while ignoring their inner qualities. She was the type of woman Tang Xiu never had a good impression of, while Aquababe actually gave him a good impression. He might act as a matchmaker a bit to tie the two if Aquababe were the one who liked light. But as for Electro Lady, Tang Xiu didn't feel like he wanted to make Tang Guang get occupied with this ill-fated relationship. Just forget it. You're not suitable for him. Tang Xiu took out a cigarette and lit it up. After taking and blowing out the smoke a few times, he turned and left. He didn't want to answer more, even if she had more questions. Electro Lady strode to chase after him and angrily asked, what the hell do you mean? Why are we not a match? I'm an ability user and an elementalist, while he's a cultivator. Why isn't it a perfect match for us? Tang Xiu's pace came to a halt and he said with a pale smile, do you think the abilities of elementalists can be compared to that of cultivators? Do you think you're a good match for him? Yes, answered Electro Lady firmly. Ability users do have some power to be proud of, as powerful elementalists are as equally powerful as some cultivators. But how long can an elementalist live, may I ask? Tang Xiu shook his head. 100 years? Or 200 years? Do you know how long cultivators can live if their cultivation keeps getting stronger? What does this have to do with how long you can live if two people don't love each other? Retorted Electro Lady angrily. Besides, there had been a super strong person among the ability users who lived for 200 plus years before. Pity that it was during the anti-Japanese War of Resistance, so I wasn't able to meet him. This issue of your lifespan doesn't matter? Are you kidding? Tang Xiu berated her. If Tang Guang cultivates with my instructions, his cultivation will keep improving and he can have a lifespan of at least a millennium. If he cultivates diligently and has some luck, he even can become an ascending immortal in the future. By then, he won't only have a lifespan of thousands of years, but even possibly tens of thousands of years. What about you? Even if you become a super powerful elementalist one day, you can only live for at most 200 plus years. When you die by then, do you really want to push Tangguang to drown in loneliness and walk the path of cultivation in solitary? This Electro Lady was not a cultivator. She had heard some hearsay about cultivators and knew that a very strong cultivator was indeed able to live for a very long time. However, she really fell in love with Tang Guang the instant she saw him. She truly realized that it was love at first sight. She hadn't had such a feeling of falling in love at first sight, even though the number of people she had fallen in love with was in the 3 digits. But the story was very different now. Her heart moved the very moment she saw Tang Guang. That feeling burst forth by itself and she couldn't extricate herself of it. Upon seeing such disdain from Tang Xiu's expression, only then did Electro Lady realize that there was such a gap between her and Tang Guan. But she was really unwilling to give up. After hesitating for a while, she said with all seriousness, "Can you teach me how to cultivate, Mr. Tang? As long as I become a cultivator, I can be with Tang Guang for a long time." Do you think you can become a cultivator just by moving your tongue? What a big joke. Tang Xiu rolled his eyes and snappily replied, "There's an unwritten rule in our cultivation world. You can never impart the art easily. Who do you think you are and what qualifications do you have to ask me to teach you the cultivation technique, huh?" With that said, Tang Xiu really couldn't be bothered by her anymore and strode to Wang Rui, who had vented his anger, and said, "Your mortal enemy has died, and the crisis that befell upon your Qingsheng school has also been lifted. I've delivered on the promise I gave you and have paid back your favor. We'll see each other again later if fate wills it." Wang Rui looked at Tang Xiu with a bloody face. His lips squirmed a few times and suddenly asked, "If I were to practice according to that type of cultivation technique you've imparted to us, is it possible to have the strength you currently have at present?" "No." Tang Xiu shook his head and said, "There's no hope for you to achieve it in your life unless you happen upon other opportunities. What the Qingsheng school has is only martial art heritage to begin with. With what I've taught you, you can make it 10 to 20 times stronger. It's already good enough a gift for you." Wang Rui looked disappointed and fell into silence for a while. Then he said, "Tang Xiu, what price do I have to pay so you can teach me a cultivation art to practice? Do you want me to exchange it for my life in serving you? No. You're not the kind of man who will serve others, ever." Tang Xiu shook his head and said, "I don't need you to serve under me, while the path to the Tao cannot be passed on easily either. I always weigh the situation of those who I will impart cultivation art to. The previous you may still have the chance to walk on the cultivation path, had it not been for the calamity that befell upon your Qingsheng school and led to the death of your father who had been killed by Tao Master poison. But now, your situation is not just suitable for it." "Why not?" asked Wang Rui in a heavy voice. "The current you has a heart that is filled with too much grudge and with evil tendencies," explained Tang Xiu. Even if I bring you to the threshold of the cultivation path, you won't achieve much in the future. There's even a high probability that the higher your cultivation is, the more likely you are to fall into an obsession which will lead you to the blazing path of evil. It would be very easy for you to fall into a calamitous path of devils with no way to return. I understand. Wang Rui stared at Tang Xiu deeply. Yet, even though he said he'd given it up on the outside, he became more adamant to be a cultivator inwardly, wanting to be a very strong powerhouse such as Tang Xiu in the future. Tang Xiu himself couldn't be bothered with the aftermath of the incident this time due to the presence of Electra Lady and Aquababe. After leaving with Jing and the rest, they went directly to the cave near the mountain brooks where Mo Ao and Zhang Xinyue were staying. To begin with, the purpose of his visit to Qingcheng Mountain was to obtain the red silk flower. But, he didn't have a plan to leave immediately after achieving it. It was due to the blood-seizing pill. He must concoct it as soon as possible to break through in his cultivation. Else, he would be in for big trouble if he ever met with another cultivator at the Golden Core stage again. When will we leave this place, Tang Xiu? Zhang Xinyue had a very complicated mood at this time. She felt rather reluctant to be separated from Tang Xiu, yet she also didn't want to stay much longer in such a remote and isolated place like the Qingcheng Mountain either. She didn't even realize that after spending many days getting along together, including an incident of them becoming husband and wife, Tang Xiu had taken a place deep inside her heart. I still need to stay here for some time, at least a week or so. Tang Xiu shook his head. But I can send someone to send you back to Shanghai if you don't want to stay here. It's been many days, and I'm sure your older sister must be worried sick about your safety too. Zhang Xinyue hesitated and then made up her mind, then I won't go back now since you still need a week to tend to your things. Besides, I'm kinda in a need of rest since I've been living in the big city all year round while constantly working hard for my studies and developing my career. I think I'll spend this week staying in Qingcheng Mountain to enjoy the beauty of nature here and to relax. Since you decided so, then I'll assign Ao to protect you. Tang Xiu nodded. He'll guard you whenever you want to go anywhere to enjoy the scenery here. Why are you so kind to me? Asked Zhang Xinyue all of a sudden. Are you trying to make up for the debt you owe in your heart? Tang Xiu's mouth was opened, but he didn't know what kind of reply he should come up with. Truth be told, he did have the idea to make it up for Zhang Xinyue, though it might not be fair to her as a woman if he were to express it. Zhang Xinyue's expression was a bit dark. But then she smiled and said, all right. Let's forget it, shall we? Don't reply to me if you don't want to, regardless of whether you want to make it up to me or are falling in love with this Missy. In any case, we'll forget all the things that have happened here and return to our own lives in 7 days. Tang Xiu fell into silence. Zhang Xinyue said it in such an easy way, but could she really forget everything that had happened between them? The threads of sentiment and feelings between two people would lead to a confused state of mind if they were to keep cutting it. Tang Xiu was a free and easy person to begin with. He couldn't clear up such a situation between them, but he didn't want to be kept entangled with it either. He firmly believed that there must be a way out of every problem, so what he needed to do was to tread carefully with each step taken in the future. He no longer bothered himself with this relationship issue and finally immersed his mind and heart to begin refining the blood-snatching pill. He had definitely earned a huge harvest by coming to Qingcheng Mountain. Needless to say about the red silk flower, the large number of herbs he obtained from the Qingcheng Monastery's underground vault were significant cultivation resources for him. There was also that soul-slaying spike. As he recalled this object, Tang Xiu suppressed his mind immediately and used the demon god's soul devourer cauldron to start concocting the pill. Though the rest of the herbs had been prepped properly, Tang Xiu's pace while concocting the pill was rather slow, though he kept it very smooth. An explosion sound was heard from the cauldron on the 4th day as Tang Xiu threw in the last precious herb, the red silk flower, into the demon god soul devourer cauldron. He cast the pill concocting technique and started to form the medicinal pill. When he opened the lid of the cauldron, a strong medicinal scent filled the whole cave. Everyone stayed inside in the cave for the last 4 days, and Zhang Xinyue, who hadn't left to enjoy the scenery outside, felt her spirit dim while all the pores over her body stretched out as she was intoxicated in the rich medicinal scent. It was comfortable. It made her look at the demon god soul devourer cauldron while her throat unknowingly gulped a few times, swallowing her saliva. Absorb. Tang Xiu cast a secret art rune and took a peanut-sized, red-blooded blood-seizing pill immediately to ingest it. Oh, none shall stay in the cave without my order. Tang Xiu shouted and quickly retrieved back the demon god soul devourer cauldron into his interspatial ring. Then, he sat cross-legged in the same spot and crazily began to digest the efficacy and energy contained in the blood-seizing pill. After the blood-seizing pill entered Tang Xiu's stomach, a torrent of blood burst out and flooded every corner of Tang Xiu's body. The tide of blood flushed on, washing his muscles and tempering his bones, including his internal organs over and over again while increasing the flexibility and firmness all the way through. The surging blood was gradually encapsulated by the red-blooded energy of the medicinal force inside Tang Xiu's blood vessels, which underwent a qualitative change. With the passage of time, the amount of blood in his blood vessels was getting less and less. On the 3rd day after he took the pill, the amount of blood in his blood vessels only remained at a quarter of what it had been before. However, even though it was just only a quarter of the previous amount, Tang Xiu was not affected by it whatsoever. His blood that was originally red seemed to have been covered by a layer of golden light, like it was being coated with a glossy red and golden color. I'm so starving. The moment Tang Xiu opened his eyes, strong hunger made him particularly uncomfortable. He quickly took out a lot of food and wolfed them down under the curious gaze of Zhang Xinyue. 2 hours passed by, yet Tang Xiu didn't stop munching. While crazily eating and drinking, his body extracted the energy to nourish his blood and qi and added it into his blood vessels. Chapter 863, May you live the life with no worries. Zhang Xinyue, who sat across Tang Xiu, was watching the food that kept popping out of thin air but was constantly devoured by this hungry ghost with her jaw wide open, unable to utter a word. She roughly estimated that Tang Xiu had at least wolfed down several 100 kilograms of food in the 2 hours. What a whale of an appetite! Zhang Xinyue finally found that Tang Xiu no longer took out the food, but turned to take out a bottle of fine wine and tossed it down fast. She was previously afraid that Tang Xiu would be bursting out due to being too full, but it turned out that her fear was unfounded. Just as she was about to speak, she suddenly heard Tang Xiu shout, "Hey, go catch some game and roast them for me. I can still wolf down several 100 pounds of barbecued meat." Bam! She fell to the edge of the bed. When Tang Xiu stood up and came to her with a confused face, she just sat back with a hand covering her forehead and said with an expression of being at a loss between laughter and tears, "Did you just get reincarnated as the hungry ghost with that appetite? You've been eating for a full 2 hours, and yet you still want to devour a few 100 kilograms more?" Only then did Tang Xiu suddenly realize that his frantic dining truly scared Zhang Xinyue. Yet, he did still feel starving. If he hadn't yet cleaned up all the food stored inside his interspatial ring, he would have probably been unable to stop eating now. However, the nutrition from the food was indeed the best way for him to supplement his blood and qi. After all, his system's blood vessels lost 3/4 of their blood. He was afraid that he would feel weak if he didn't eat more to supplement it. Cultivators like us can't be regarded with common sense, to begin with. People in ancient times did say that one can devour a cow when he's starving, no? That statement holds true, It's not an exaggeration that people like that exist. I have exerted too much energy these days, and the food is the best to supplement the life energy I have spent, explained Tang Xiu with a light smile. But eating that much is rather excessive, even if your energy consumption is indeed a bit large, no, rebuked Zhang Xinyue. You just ate hundreds of kilograms of food, I'm really suspicious of how your stomach works while being fully loaded like that. Even if your digestion system is great and is able to directly digest the food right as it enters your belly, why didn't I see you go to the toilet at all? Cough, cough. Tang Xiu couldn't argue back at Zhang Xinyue's words. He couldn't say that he could absorb 99.9% of the nutrients contained in the food. As for the 0.1% of the remaining waste, could it make him go to the toilet now? He might have done that if he had devoured a few hundred more kilograms of food. However, the problem was not that he couldn't explain it, but that it was too embarrassing. Tang Xiu shook his head and replied with a dry smile, "Let's not talk about this topic, shall we?" Shortly put, you can't see those who walk on the cultivation path with normal people's eyes. Also, come to eat when Ao has roasted the game. Zhang Xinyue nodded at his words. But then she suddenly said, "Tang Xiu, can you give me a taste of that medicine you just concocted?" Just smelling that scent of the medicinal pill made me feel spirited these days. Also, I couldn't move the bed previously, but when my mobile fell a day ago, I moved the bed without thinking. I didn't expect that I would be able to do that, so it means that my strength has increased. The smell of such a medicinal pill does have a very good effect on normal people, said Tang Xiu with a smile. It indeed can change your physique if you're subtly influenced by it. However, the pill I just concocted was the kind that you cannot consume, else it would harm you instead. Why do you say that? Asked Zhang Xinyue. You're not a cultivator, explained Tang Xiu. If you were to take that medicinal pill rashly, the enormous energy from its efficacy will make your body burst and explode. A chill filled Zhang Xinyue's heart and she no longer mentioned about taking the medicinal pill anymore. She changed the position of her lower body and changed the topic anyways. When are we going to leave this place? I haven't taken a shower for a few days. You see, I just broke the record of how long I haven't taken a bath since my childhood. Well, we'll go back to Qinglin County to rest after we have satiated our hunger, said Tang Xiu with a smile. All right, replied Zhang Xinyue with a surprised, but happy look. By the way, didn't you say you want to enjoy the beauty of the scenery around Qingqing Mountain? How come I have never seen you go out this week? That, Zhang Xinyue's face blushed and she let out a dry smile and replied, I was afraid that you'd run into troubles here alone, so I didn't go out to do that. These days, she had been thinking through her feelings and finally realized that she ended up like her older sister and had unknowingly fallen in love with this guy. Of course, she didn't deny the fact that it was related to her first time doing it with him. But love is love. Even if she denies it, she still couldn't free herself from this feeling. Nevertheless, she kept thinking about it over and over again, that she finally experienced such a dreamlike love this time she went out. She decided to immediately sever any contact with him and give up all these feelings once she left Qingqing Mountain. Late at night, Tang Xiu took Zhang Xinyue, and the rest back to Qinglin County. The whole county town looked very quiet at present. Back when he previously came here, some pedestrians or vehicles could be seen passing by at night, but now, they hadn't even encountered a single pedestrian or car on the road to the Qinglin County's 5-star hotel, Sunbao. Why do I feel like something is amiss here, Tang Xiu? This is not a normal situation, commented Zhang Xinyue, who just got out of the car and subconsciously looked around at the quiet and empty night scenery. Tang Xiu forced a smile and said, maybe the recent murder cases that have appeared suddenly in a row scares the people here. Besides, it's already midnight, so it's kinda normal to see nobody outside. Zhang Xinyue, however, could only reluctantly accept his reply. Welcome, sir, ma'am. May I know how many rooms you need? 4 on-duty staffers looked at the group at the same time behind the hotel's lobby counter. 2 of them subconsciously glanced to the left at the rest area where the hotel had assigned 4 security guards to stand guard. 2 presidential suites, please, said Tang Xiu. The 4 female receptionists looked surprised. But after they observed Tang Xiu for a while, one of them suddenly asked, are you the young divine Dr. Tang Xiu? I think you're somewhat looking familiar. Tang Xiu couldn't help but laugh and replied. When did I become so famous? If anything, I stayed in this hotel previously, so how did nobody recognize me before? It's really you. The female receptionist looked pleasantly surprised. Great, I am finally able to see the face of a great personage like you. You see, my uncle was almost poisoned in the opening sale of the Golden Goblet Emperor Gao's Villa complex not long ago. I heard from him that it was very fortunate that you were there as he was saved from the clutch of death. Divine Dr. Tang, you're my uncle's savior, and thus the savior of my family as well. We are really thankful to you. Thank you very much. Tang Xiu smiled and said, You're welcome. But saving people is the responsibility of being a doctor. A few minutes later, with warm greetings from the 4 female receptionists, they finally checked in and entered their respective presidential suites. What made Tang Xiu unable to utter any word was that Zhang Xinyue insisted that she must stay with him in the same suite. She even picked the side room for herself. Boss, what's your plan next? Mo Ao was the only one remaining in the presidential suites hall, and he immediately asked right after Tang Xiu finished bathing. Tang Xiu thought for a while and slowly said, We'll return to Shanghai first, and then head to Longquan Bay in Kaunas. We haven't yet opened the Immortal trove there, so it's time to find out about it. Mo Ao nodded and said, There's also another matter, boss. It seems that it won't be long before you need to take the exam at your college. When you were busy concocting polls a couple of days ago, your class teacher called you and I picked it up. The exam? Tang Xiu blanked out and let out a forced, wry smile on his handsome face. If he had to count it, the time he spent on campus was perhaps only less than 2 months ever since he studied at Shanghai University for nearly a year. He had almost finished all the curriculum for the freshmen, yet his attendance rate was, so to say, truly appalling. I gotta use some personal connections to make the teachers of those subjects give me the green light. Else, my credits, GPA, and the graduation certificate I'll get in the future will be affected, even if I do pass the exams. Tang Xiu lit up a cigarette and thought inwardly. In fact, obtaining a diploma was not a matter of significance to him, but his mother was very much looking forward to seeing him obtain a graduation certificate from a famous university. Thus, he had no choice but to force a smile without any other options left. Of course, his mother wouldn't blame him either if he really didn't want to continue studying. After all, those who had diploma certificates from the world's top universities might not be able to achieve his current achievements at present. However, he was certain that his mother would be disappointed if he had no certificate from a higher institution. Go and have a rest, all. We'll rush back to Shanghai tomorrow morning. Tang Xiu waved and then gazed up to see a few twinkling stars in the dark sky outside the window. 10 minutes later, Zhang Xinyue came out of her room with wet hair. When she saw Tang Xiu sitting alone on the sofa drinking beer, his gaze fixated outside the window. Her eyes couldn't help but filled with gentleness. Have something on your mind? Tang Xiu turned his head and looked at Zhang Xinyue's slender and curvy figure, along with a face that was almost identical to Zhang Xinyue's. He smiled at her inquiry and said, Yeah, been thinking about something. Zhang Xinyue let out a faint smile and picked up the unopened can of beer on the tea table. After taking 2 sips of it, she then smiled and said, Care to tell me about it? You won't understand it even if I tell you about it. Tang Xiu shook his head. But I do have another issue I need to discuss with you, though. Zhang Xinyue's expression slightly changed and there was a look of hesitation on her face for several seconds before she slowly asked. Can we not talk about it? I can't. Some issues need to be resolved. Tang Xiu shook his head and said, No matter what you think, what I want to tell you is that I can't give you romantic feelings, because I already owe a lot of emotional debts. I admit that there's something happening between us even though it was caused by a mistake arising out of circumstances. But still, I can't let you feel upset about having been wronged either. I won't promise you money because I don't want to see this issue as a transactional matter. However, I can promise to make you live your life with no worries in order to make up for my debt to you. A life without worries, eh? Zhang Xinyue smiled and muttered to herself in a self-mocking tone. She then stood up and came before the window before speaking to Tang Xiu behind her back. In what way, and how can I live my life without worries? Chapter 864, Back to Campus. Tang Xiu got up and came to Zhang Xinyue as he took out a jade bottle out and handed it to her. There's a drop of the body-tempering liquid inside. Pour it into the hot water when you take a bath. It can improve your physique and you'll know the benefits after you use it. But keep in mind that the process can be a bit painful. Try your best to endure it and soak yourself for half an hour or more. Immediately after, Tang Xiu took out a pen and paper and quickly wrote a cultivation technique on it. It was not cultivation from the immortal world but one of the many cultivation techniques he had obtained back when he was in Chengxi City. This is called the pure ice art, a type of cultivation technique that is suited for women. I have drawn the meridians and acupoints of the human body as well as marked the energy circulation route for this cultivation technique. You can practice the cultivation technique written here later, but you'll rely on yourself for the stage you can achieve it though. Zhang Xinyue took the jade bottle and the cultivation technique note as she looked at Tang Xiu and asked, "Is this what you said as I can live my life without worries?" "Not really. You can contact me whenever you're short on money or you need help for some other things too in the future anytime." Tang Xiu shook his head and said, "If you can't contact me, you can go to the magnificent Tang Corporation to find Kong Xia or Ouyang Lulu in the Paradise Manor in Shanghai. Of course, you can also head to the Everlasting Feast Halls branch in any place in the country. The person in charge of every branch will learn of your name from now on. Also, I'll personally refine an amulet after returning to Shanghai and send someone to deliver it to you. Your safety will be guaranteed as long as you carry it at all times. Because of my current cultivation, however, the amulet only has limited use and can only protect you up to 3 times. Regardless of any accident such as a car accident or falling down from a height of tens of meters, including someone shooting at you, you won't be harmed by it in the slightest. Besides that." Zhang Xinyue raised her hand to interrupt him and shook his head. "Forget everything else. It's enough. But can you give me 2 amulets? 2 amulets. Tang Xiu stared blankly for a moment before he realized that Zhang Xinyue asked for 2 amulets, because she wanted to give one to her older sister, Zhang Xinya. He nodded and said, "No problem. I'll give 2 amulets to you." Zhang Xinyue turned around and gently put the cultivation technique note and jade bottle on the tea table, before she returned back to Tang Xiu's front. There was a gentleness in her eyes as she said softly, "Since we must part ways when we return to Shanghai and then completely forget everything that has happened in Qingqing Mountain, will you satisfy my request again?" "What wishes do you want me to grant, exactly?" asked Tang Xiu. Zhang Xinyue opened her arms and gently hugged Tang Xiu and said, "I want you to be my boyfriend for half a day before we leave today. To be honest with you, there have been several young men I have had a liking to in my life, but never could I have said I love any one of them." Tang Xiu understood what she meant, yet there was a look of embarrassment and awkwardness on his face. He could feel her delicate body, which only wearing pajamas, in his embrace. He similarly opened his arms, yet was unable to truly hug her. What had happened previously was an accident, and even if he did have such a relationship with Zhang Xinyue, he didn't feel such a feeling at all since he couldn't remember the situation at that time. "This is my last wish." Zhang Xinyue could feel Tang Xiu's body stiffen. Her forehead touched Tang Xiu's chin and the side of her face leaned on his neck as she said in a faint voice. Tang Xiu could only sigh inwardly and relaxed his body to hug her gently. Then he said, "Let's go back to the room and have a rest earlier. We must hurry back home tomorrow." This night, however, Tang Xiu didn't return to his room but sat on the bed where Zhang Xinyue was sleeping, watching her fall asleep with sweet dreams until she woke up from her sleep at 9 in the morning. As dusk came, a passenger plane landed at Shanghai Airport, and not long after, Tang Xiu, Zhang Xinyue and the rest appeared at the airport's exit lane. Tang Xiu. As they came out of the airport, Zhang Xinyue stopped walking. "What's wrong?" asked Tang Xiu. Zhang Xinyue took a deep breath and spoke with all seriousness. "I hope you can remember our agreement. We must forget what happened in Qingqing Mountain from now on, and we should not meet again in this life if possible." Tang Xiu thought for a moment before he nodded and replied, "I understand." Zhang Xinyue herself felt very depressed inside, but she was perfectly aware that it was her older sister who had fallen deeply in love with Tang Xiu. Fate seemed to not allow for her to be with him in her lifetime. "Then, we'll part ways here. I'll send someone to escort you back," replied Tang Xiu. "No need, I'll take a cab to go back by myself." Zhang Xinyue shook her head. Tang Xiu looked hesitant before he nodded and said, "All right, then. Wait for Jin Shi, who drives your car from Qinglin County. I'll send him to deliver your car along with the amulets." At the airport's exit, Tang Xiu watched Zhang Xinyue turn around and leave with complex emotions surfaced in her eyes. But he didn't notice that after she turned around and walked a few steps, tears welled up in her beautiful eyes and rolled down along her cheek. "Let's go back home." An hour later, Tang Xiu had returned to the Blue Star Villa complex. Nothing had changed since he left this house, and the two housekeepers still took good care of the house diligently. He didn't notice anyone in advance that he had come back, so nobody disturbed him. 2 days later, which was Sunday, he stayed at home and made 10 amulets, 2 of which were given to Jin Shi to be delivered to Zhang Xinyue's store along with her car. As Monday came and the first wisp of sunshine rose from the east, Tang Xiu came out of the house and took a walk to his campus. After finding that it was still early, he bought breakfast boxes in the cafeteria and took them to his dormitory. Given what he knew about Yukai's habit, this fella should be just crawling out of his bed at this time. Knock, knock. Just as he came to the dormitory door, Tang Xiu knocked on the door and found that it was left unlocked. There was no other sound except someone's snore. After pushing the door and coming inside, he saw Yukai, Hu Qingsong, and Xue Chao still lying in bed and snoring loudly. Did they have a drink last night? Tang Xiu glanced with a strange expression at many bottles disorderly discarded on the floor and the cupboard. Yukai and Hu Qingsong were normally lazy bums, but not Xue Chao, the diligent one. How come he? A smile climbed up his face, and while still carrying the breakfast boxes, he shouted loudly, "Fire!" What? Fire? Where is it? Hu Qingsong abruptly sat up from the bed and didn't even see Tang Xiu as he straightly jumped from the bed in a rush. Yukai was better than him and desperately threw out the quilt with a stance that was about to run from the bed. Huh? Big bro, Tang. Xue Chao, however, just took a slow motion to sit down, while his sleepiness instantly vanished upon seeing Tang Xiu's face. Well, you 3 of you were truly inside dreamland, eh? Tang Xiu chuckled and said, "Did something good happen to you or something? You should have had a great drink last night, right?" Shit. Bastard. Hu Qingsong and Yukai straightly spat out the profanity after realizing that Tang Xiu had pranked them. It had been a long time since they got along together and, after the merriment, Tang Xiu knew why the trio drank so much alcohol. It turned out that the girl targeted by Hu Qingsong was snatched by a handsome rich fella who also had good academic grades. Hey, old Hu, there are like tens of millions of girls in China, why should you bother to drown yourself over just one flower? Commented Tang Xiu with a smile. Just ask these buddies of yours to help you by introducing you to a better one. It's not that I'm unhappy that she was pursued and snatched by this guy, mate, smiled Hu Qingsong bitterly. The thing is that damn bastard is way too unbridled. He relies on his wealth, and I admit that he's richer than me, but it feels like he's abusing me, you know. You don't know him, big bro, That guy is nothing but a jerk and is also quite famous for being unfaithful and fickle in love in our campus, while he also has tons of chicks outside. That brat even stopped and violently beat someone outside the campus at the end of last year. Eh? Tang Xiu was amazed and asked, to think that he even dares to fight outside the campus. Does this guy have many resources and abilities? Yu Kai patted Hu Qingsong's shoulder and said with a dry smile, well, he does have quite an impressive background, big bro. Rumors have it that he's the son of a rich and powerful man in Haiqing province. I admit that my family is quite well off, but comparing to him, it's like a chasm. Do you know how he pursued that girl old who had been targeting? I never knew how that guy could do it, but he got a helicopter and landed it on open space behind our campus, then confidently showered her with roses and all kinds of gifts. That kind of spectacle. Tang Xiu couldn't help but chuckle and said, it's no fun to nail girls who love material things, mate. Besides, just relax, old Hu. Don't give up the whole forest just for a tree. I chased her for half a year and never once had I ever touched her, which got me depressed, said Hu Qingsong helplessly. Bah, forget it, please do not console me, alright? I won't be bothered by that brat Meow if he's no longer acting arrogant before me. A surname of Meow? And one from Haiqing province? Tang Xiu was quite surprised and interjected, this fellow you told me, is he the son of the big boss of Meow Group in Haiqing province? Nah, he's not. But I heard that the Meow Group's big boss is his uncle though. Hu Qingsong shook his head. Ah. So it turns out that he's Miao Wentong's nephew. No wonder he acts so arrogantly since Miao Wentong does have the wealth and is a very powerful man, to begin with. Tang Xiu smiled and said, anyways, let's stop talking about this topic and take a bath, won't you? I've brought you all breakfast and we'll go to class after grabbing them. We don't have any class this morning, big bro, Tang, replied Yu Kai with round eyes. Say what? Tang Xiu was surprised and spaced out. He hadn't come to campus to attend class for a long time and thus didn't expect that the schedule had been changed. Then he helplessly said, let's just go outside and hang out since we have no class, then. I haven't been on campus for a long time and feel kinda estranged now. Well, I can't go to sleep again anyway, so why don't we come over to hear song rehearsals, suggested Yu Kai all of a sudden. That's a good idea. Second that. Hu Qingsong and Shui Chao nodded in agreement at the same time. Listening to song rehearsals? Where? Asked Tang Xiu, looking confused. It's our class teacher, big bro. She's just great, period, said Yu Kai with a grin. Well, let's spare the explanation, shall we? Words are no proof, just wait and come with us. You'll know it. The class teacher, Han Qingguo. The revelation caused Tang Xiu to be confused. After the trio gorged down the meal, the group of four quickly left the dormitory. Chapter 865, I'm sorry. With a mind full of confusion, Tang Xiu followed Yu Kai and the others to leave Shanghai University. They soon turned into a lane and after going past 7 turns on the road, they finally stopped outside a high-walled courtyard. What's this place? Tang Xiu looked up at the plaque and looked surprised. The plaque had 3 golden characters written in bold cursive calligraphy with majestic grandeur. Big bro, Tang, this should be your first time visiting this place, right? Yu Kai grinned and said, tons of great musicians have studied in this place and those big singers kinda regard it as a holy place. Those who are lucky enough to study here for a period of time usually become quite famous in the entertainment industry. Alright, don't keep people on tenterhooks, won't you? Interjected Tang Xiu. Just tell it to me straight. You see, there's an elderly person residing in this magical syllable memorial archway. Rumors have it that he has been living here for a few decades and that he never leaves its premises, explained Yu Kai. But his fame has been so resounding in the ears of countless top musicians, even some foreign maestros often come to visit him. This person is said to be a maestro in music and an expert of tens of musical instruments, while his musical accomplishments seem to have reached an unparalleled realm. Then, what does this have to do with Teacher Han? Asked Tang Xiu. It had nothing to do with her had it been more than a month ago. But that man announced the news a month ago and the music circles kinda got swept over with a great sensation since. It's said that he has taken the English teacher of Shanghai University, Han Qingwu, as his master. What? Tang Xiu's expression slightly changed. Han Qingwu knew nothing about music as far as he knew, and it was Xue Qingcheng in his previous life who was quite a maestro and even had very high attainment in music. Could it be? Tang Xiu inhaled a deep breath and asked, so Teacher Han is currently here now?
Yeah.
Teacher Han comes here every Monday morning to teach that old guy. Yu Kai nodded and said, we were looking for her for about half a month ago to consult some small issues with her and learned it from her own mouth. You might not believe it, big bro, Tang. But our Teacher Han is unexpectedly a grandmaster maestro of music. Not really, I think, interjected Hu Qingsong, who suddenly frowned. If I remember correctly, big bro, Tang is also very skilled in music. That's right, you were Teacher Han's student in high school, big bro. Your zither performance in the freshman welcoming party is still clear in my mind. Did you get your musical skills from Teacher Han during high school? No. Tang Xiu's reply was rather cold and he went straight to the closed door. He pushed it open and went inside. He wanted to see Han Qingwu and ask how she became a maestro of music all of a sudden. Inside the compound, a white-haired old man, though still full of vigor, was dressed in a white Chinese tunic suit and was sitting on a bluish-green bamboo mat while reading a zither musical score. As he noticed that someone came inside, he slowly looked up and there was a displeased look on his face. How come you are here again? Yu Kai swiftly took out half a pack of Chinese cigarettes from his pocket before extracting one and passing it over while grinning. Well, elderly Chu, didn't you tell me before that you can't get that God's nectar wine off your mind? You see, we come here to deliver this wine. The God's nectar? Where is it? The old man's spirit soared and his displeased look vanished right away. Yu Kai pointed to Tang Xiu while smilingly said, now comes the time that I'll introduce you to a great personage. This brother next to me is Tang Xiu, the magnificent Tang Corporation's big boss. God's nectar is produced by his company. If you want to drink this wine every day, you can get it from him. The old man carefully observed Tang Xiu and slowly got up. Under the gazes of Yu Kai, Hu Qingsong, and Xue Chao trio, he came down and walked to the front of Tang Xiu, cupping his hands to greet with a bow. This old man, Chu Jia, greets divine Dr. Tang. Elderly Chu. Tang Xiu couldn't understand why would this old man greet him with such a respectful attitude, yet he still returned the salute with similar politeness. I have long heard your honored name, divine Dr. Tang. Pity that this old man has taken an oath that he will never head out of this pavilion for a lifetime and is thus unable to see you. You've honored this humble cottage of mine with your visit, said the old man with a smile. Elderly Chu, I actually come to your residence just to find Teacher Han this time, said Tang Xiu. The old man stared blankly for a moment and glanced at Yu Kai's group before he suddenly sighed and said, now that I recall it, you are still teacher's student too. At this moment, a beautiful figure appeared in the inside of the round arch entrance. It was Han Qingwu, who now wore a plain dress. Her eyes flashed with joy upon seeing Tang Xiu as she walked over and said, you're back, Tang Xiu. I thought you weren't even going to take the first year's final exam. Can I have a minute to talk with you in private? Asked Tang Xiu. Han Qingwu felt her heart tightened, yet her expression was still. What do you want to discuss with me? Some private issues, answered Tang Xiu. Han Qingwu was silent for a moment, but still nodded and said, come with me. Yu Kai, Hu Qingsong, and Xue Chao trio nearby raised their thumbs up while watching Tang Xiu with admiration visible in their eyes. They already learned that Tang Xiu's luck with women was nothing but great, Yet they didn't expect that his methods of nailing girls were similarly awesome. To their surprise, he even requested to have a private talk with Teacher Han in front of them. Man, he really deserves to be called our big brother. Even Teacher Han has fallen to his charm. You know, I definitely won't take you to accompany me drinking to dispel my sorrow, when I can learn 1 or 2/10 of his tricks to pick up chicks. The old man Chu Jia, however, was a very experienced person, and he was keenly aware that the relationship between Tang Xiu and Han Qinggu was far from ordinary. He immediately berated the Yukai trio upon hearing their comments. Refrain yourselves from spitting out such drivel, brats. Teacher Han is also your teacher. You must remember that and honor her as a student should. I don't think we speak nonsense, elderly Chu, replied Hu Qingsong with a grin. Our teacher Han does like Big Bro, Tang, and many of us already know this fact. Besides, it's true that respecting a teacher is really a must, but this is already a new era where it's normal to see a teacher and a student falling in love with each other. There have even been plenty of them getting married. Chu Jia only shook his head at his response and forced a smile. He was not an outdated person who was bound to the old traditions, nor was he a feudal-minded either. He was naturally aware of some trends in the current era, and despite there were many ideas he couldn't approve of from this era, he could do nothing to alter it either. There was another compound in the interior arch with a row of spacious room on the left side of the courtyard. After Han Qinggu brought Tang Xiu to one of the rooms, she made tea after Tang Xiu came inside and served a cup before speaking. What exactly do you want to discuss with me? Tang Xiu's gaze was like a torch as he asked, don't you have something you want to explain to me? I don't know what to explain to you. Han Qinggu shook her head. Should I call you Han Qinggu, the teacher Han now, or shall I call you Shui Qingcheng now? Sneered Tang Xiu. Han Qingwu's figure shuddered and her expression turned somewhat pale in that instant, while her eyes tried to somewhat dodge Tang Xiu's gaze. Judging from your response and expression, you should have recalled your memories, haven't you? Followed Tang Xiu coldly. Han Qingwu nodded, but then, she shook her head and said bitterly, I recalled a lot of things, but there are still many things I can't remember. Until now, even I can't still figure out what relates Shui Qingcheng to me, like with what you just asked. What have you recalled, then? Asked Tang Xiu in a deep voice. Han Qinggu pointed to a row of instruments in the room and said, I saw a lot of scenes, some of which were scenes where I used musical instruments, and then I found myself to be an expert at music and dance all of a sudden. Also, I seem to have seen a whole new world called the Immortal world. I didn't understand it before. Like why did I suddenly have so much power and why would cultivation techniques appear inside my mind? But now, I figured out that there was seemingly a woman named Shui Qingcheng, and part of her memories are inside my mind now. However, even though I've figured out a lot of things and there are a lot of fragments and scenes in my mind, there are many things I feel very familiar with but can't understand why. What I want to know is how many things you've remembered about me, asked Tang Xiu in a deep voice. I can't see it clearly. Han Qingwu shook her head with a bitter smile. There's always a man appearing in my mind, but all I can see is only his back and I have no means to see his face whatsoever. But I have a hunch that the man should be related to you. Disappointment flashed in Tang Xiu's eyes, and yet, there was also a relief. He really wanted to know the answer. He truly wished to find out as to why Shui Qingcheng had to betray him in the past. Yet, he was also scared of getting the answer and wreck himself. Gu Yan had told him a lot of things, particularly all the rumors about Shui Qingcheng. But he didn't know whether the rumors were reliable and true, nor was he able to know for certain what her true intention was. Silence fell for a very long time before Tang Xiu took a deep breath and slowly said, I really hope that you didn't lie to me since I hate being deceived by anyone. With that said, he turned around and headed toward the outside. Han Qingwu kept watching Tang Xiu's back as he left through the door with tears welling up in her eyes. Only after Tang Xiu's back had finally disappeared outside the door for a while did she finally mutter 2 words. I'm sorry. Tang Xiu himself returned to the front courtyard and didn't even bid farewell to Chu Jian. He just told Yu Kai Trio that there were some issues he needed to tend to before he left in a hurry. He didn't even respond back even though they called him. He couldn't tell whether Han Qingwu told him the truth or not. But there was one thing he could be sure of, that even if Han Qingwu really hadn't yet restored all her memories, the time for her to remember everything probably wouldn't be long. That resentment and hatred still enveloped his heart and mind, regardless. He needed to figure out the truth of the matter, or at least, learn the reason for the betrayal. There was also the question, why she was reincarnated on Earth. Everything turned Tang Xiu's mood for the worse and he had no intention of returning to campus whatsoever, and directly headed to his house. After he got there, he called Gu Changmin, the owner of Dingshan Media. "Brother Gu, do you have an acquaintance at Shanghai University?" "I do, why?" Gu Changmin's reply was short and neat. "You also know that I'm a first-year student there, but I have too many things to tend to this year, hence, I often take a leave of absence," explained Tang Xiu. "So, there are two things I'd like to ask you for help with if it doesn't trouble you. Why don't you leave out the polite pleasantries between us, Brother Tang? Just speak it out freely to me if you need something from me," said Gu Changmin with a chuckle. "And yes, I'm a good friend of Vice President Li of Shanghai University."